And Natalie asks, and this is a great question, Natalie. I appreciate you asking it. Could you please describe a day in the life of a PM at Salesforce? For instance, how many clients, number of projects, length of projects, travel, number of team members, etc. Just curious if there's a typical day or different based on industry, client type, etc.
It's a good question. I'm going to go with a typical day, and I'm with the assumption that, you're a senior project manager, right? You're on a medium-sized program. So you would be fully focused on that program, right? So one project, one client, depending on your number of resources. It's a good question. I would say between 15 and 20. Okay, those resources would be yourself as a PM. You'd have a senior business analyst. You'd have a technical architect. Those are your foundational people, right? So those three for sure. Then you would have your developers. You would have your QA lead, your QA resources. You would have education, whatever it may be. But it all comes down to, if you take a look at your project, it comes down to the scope of the engagement, right? And so depending on what you're trying to achieve, that's how we staff out our resources in terms of their specialties. But that gives you a high level of those resources. In terms of travel, I'm looking in the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything. So we've had an interesting life the past 2 years, right? Like more than 2 years now. So to be transparent, I had my first, I traveled for the first time in 2 years last month. We had a overall shutdown of travel. When COVID hit, we did not allow anyone to travel. We still have a travel approval process that goes up to SVP to be able to travel client focused. With that being said, as we go back to normal, say COVID never existed, and that was my biggest wish, all of our wishes, right? As a project manager at Salesforce, we're not a consultancy where you fly out on Monday and you come back on Thursday every week, right? We are more of a, as a project manager, you will have control of that as well. You're gonna set the schedule. So when I run my projects, and I tell my team members as well, as a project manager, you can work with your client to set the expectations. You'll probably be on site for what we call our kickoff, right? So we get to know people, lay the foundation for 2 to 3 days. Because my mentality is, unless it's very, very large, after 3 days, you are losing people because they're going to come away from their day jobs. So I like to do, everyone flies in on a Monday, you start your workshop in the Monday afternoon, full day Tuesday, maybe half day Wednesday, get back home. And then after that, since we're agile, well, hybrid agile, excuse me, we would be on site for our sprint planning, right? So a couple of days. So every 2 weeks, you have that face-to-face. And then every major milestone, or if you wanted to have a workshop, right? So it's planned. When I had my last projects before I transitioned in, I was basically traveling every couple of weeks for a couple of days. But we know that people's lives have changed, right? So I, had my children, and they were like, "What do you mean you're going on a plane?" And they were crying. I'm like, "What?" They're like, "You haven't gone on a plane in 2 years, right?" So we understand, right, that people have to make different sacrifices now. It's not like before. But I think the biggest thing I think people want to know is that no, you're not going to be a road warrior at the moment at Salesforce. Just want to see if there's any other item I've missed in that question. Did I get everything, Natalie? Number of projects, how many clients? One. Oh, length of projects. It's a good question. So I would say your shortest project would be 6 months, and it could be up to 2 to 3 years, right? If you're in a large program. But I would say the average is 6 months, to a year for your projects.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks for the great question, Natalie.